4 p.m. We're bringing you developing news.
And the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez.
I'm Ed Lingao. Some stories we're watching this Tuesday, June 18. Philippine allies are condemning the latest collision incident in disputed waters. These include the U.S., France, New Zealand, and Japan. They called for a peaceful resolution to the West Philippine Sea row and cited Manila's 2016 Arbitral Award. U.S. National Security spokesman John Kirby confirms the death of the missing Filipino crew member aboard MV Tutor. The ship was attacked by Houthi rebels in the Red Sea on June 12. 21 of the 22 Filipino seafarers on the ship have made it home safely yesterday.
The camp of suspended Bambang Mayor Alice Go has submitted a clarification letter to Malacanang today. That's regarding the issues and controversies she's facing. Go has been suspended and is under investigation over her alleged ties with illegal pogo in Tarlac.
And joining us today, as always, Storycon's resident political pundit Ronald Llamas. Tito Ronald.
As always.
Oo. Magkakasunod din, nawala na yung de facto. Ibig sabihin niyan, ano na? Meron na.
Magandang hapon.
Wala pa rin.
Magandang hapon. Sa susunod, naka-zoom naman ako dyan.
Yan. Yes.
Sa Thursday.
You're headed to the US. Bakit nga ba?
Yeah. Mga lectures lang.
On anong topic? On what subject?
Geopolitics.
Geopolitics. Okay.
Ikaw ba may travel companion?
Mas magaling yata yung travel companion kaya sa akin sa geopolitics.
Ganon. Dali lang, itong upuan ko, bigla ko pa ba? So geopolitics and the audience will be Americans?
Well, depende. There are several. Mayroong mga PhilAm sa DC, may mga PhilAm sa Manhattan. May meeting ako sa UN.
And what's their point of interest in this matter? Parang...
Well, this is now the hub of the world, no? Everything is now happening here.
Is it?
Trade,
is there an increasing awareness and interest on what's happening in this part of the world? Kasi alam mo naman, di ba, itong mga encampments sa mga campuses, this is all about Gaza.
Yes, Palestine.
Yeah, and then Ukraine, of course, there's also the Ukraine matter. Wala pa naman pero dito, may interest na dito in this part of the world.
Yeah. Malaki ang interest. Even Europe Halimbawa, last February, last year, nag-lecture ako sa Germany at sa Spain dahil dito sa South China Sea issues natin, sa West Philippine Sea. So,
but Ronald, we're still far from an actual conflict, right?
Yes.
Here, in this part of the world. So what's driving the interest? Is it because of China?
Well, basically China at yung saber-rattling nila over Taiwan. At secondary, distant second, yung mga incidents dito sa West Philippine Sea. No? Yun yung kanila. Pero yung pangunahin is Taiwan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking about incidents in the West Philippine Sea, finally some confirmation, I think, Ron, Ed, from our officials about the incident early yesterday.
Yeah.
What is the official word? Is it a collision?
Collision ba sinabi? I'm not really sure. Pero what is of interest to me is yung lumabas na more details, for example, sa palawannews.com. In very specific details, quoting military officials, saying na...
Philippine military officials.
Saying number one, the Chinese boarded several vessels, if you want to call them vessels, yung RHIB, rigid-hulled inflatable boats ng Philippine Navy. Boarded some of them, and in the course of the melee, naputulan daliri ng isang crew member.
Yes.
Nabsog pa, Nabsog, Naval Special Operations Group.
Navy SEAL.
Navy SEAL natin.
Yeah.
Navy SEAL na, naputulan daliri.
So talagang may physical confrontation.
Number 3, kinumpiskate ang 8 barel ng Philippine Armed Forces. At number 4, binutas yung RHIB.
This also okay. So
allegedly, but that's if one, I can bring it up.
So this is a confrontation between uniformed armed soldiers from both sides.
Well, I don't know kung Coast Guard to ng China or...
Well, we're presuming they were also armed, heavily armed, for them to be able to confront and break the finger of one of our Navy SEALs. Diba?
Not only break, cut.
And board those rubber boats, those
Yeah.
Philippine Navy SEAL rubber boats.
Ang
right?
nakakapagtaka, medyo tahimik ang ating armed
Yes.
forces.
Walang
Yes.
lumabas.
Ang,
Officially.
ang naglabas pa ay itong mga allies natin.
Okay.
US, New Zealand, no, Japan.
So why the silence? Why the muffled response from the Philippine side?
I'm not sure. Perhaps they're trying to de-escalate.
Okay.
No? That could be.
Kasi seryoso na to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, talagang kailangan mo magano, di ba?
Yes. Or baka ina-assess pa nila how they will react dahil nga seryoso yung incident. It could be all of the above. No? Huwag natin kalimutan, may military exercises na ongoing ngayon. Di ba? With Canada, with Australia, with Japan, no? With the US.
Pero Bok, itong tanong ko rin kanina Manny Mogs eh. What does this incident mean in terms of our Mutual Defense Treaty of 1951?
Well,
It's also something we want to ask later our resource person. But ikaw, what do you think?
malapit-lapit na yan dahil military personnel in a military vessel. No? Yun naman yung ibig sabihin ng Mutual
Hindi
Defense
to
Treaty.
Unai May,
Oo.
na chartered, na binomba lang ng tubig.
Yes.
Okay.
Ito ay military vessel at saka military personnel yung na-injure.
Yes, and I think the operative word, let's just remember that the operative word in the Mutual Defense Treaty is armed attack,
Yes.
quote-unquote.
At huwag din natin kalimutan, nangyayari ito sa context nung inimpose ng China na threat sa atin, huhulihin.
Hulihan.
Last Sunday, ang deadline.
That was more or less, we thought at least, directed at civilian trespassers like atin ito. I
Yes.
think ganun, no?
Pero hindi nila in-specify.
Okay, yeah, but are you trying to say that this might have been an implementation of that order from the Chinese government?
Could be, dahil wala naman silang in-specify kung itong threat na ito ay para lamang sa mga civilian.
Or sa armed, no?
Yes.
Okay, uniform
Basta
personnel. ng
sinasabi
Philippine
nila, yung mga trespassers na papasok sa kanilang territory ay huhulihin without trial at dadalhin sa China. Ganun lang yung malinaw.
But up to this point, we still don't know, no? Kung ano yung
Dahilan.
circumstances
Yeah.
that led to this.
Usually, Patrick, kumpleto yung report dyan eh. Ngayon, medyo...
At may video pa usually.
Naghahanap tayo eh.
At saka, in this day and age of Starlink, internet and all that, ano, dapat, we would have expected a faster
Yeah.
response.
Yung simpleng bombahan ng tubig, nabibidyohan kagad. Itong meron ng kiskisa na literal.
Actually, yung kay Ray Powell, ang inilabas niya, report from the Pentagon about this incident. Yung report sa Pentagon.
Okay, maybe our next resource has more details and can enlighten us on this matter. Joining us now, Professor Renato De Castro, an international defense analyst. Prof, welcome back to Storycon.
Good afternoon, Prof.
Thank you very much for bringing me in. I feel so inferior facing you guys. You all look handsome and well-dressed
Kasi
compared to me.
Prof, pero you look dashing in your t-shirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just at home conducting my classes. We don't have an air-conditioned room, so I have to wear something comfortable, unlike you guys, who look very dignified aside from the fact you're all gorgeous and handsome.
We pretend to be dignified, not handsome.
Okay,
But unlearned.
Professor De Castro, I wonder if you have more details about this incident in Ayungin. Apparently,
Well,
this
I'm just like you. I'm relying on sources from the Pentagon. And recently, I don't know if you've seen the statement that the U.S. Indo-PACOM came out with just today. And they provided the details, of course, some matters regarding the June 17 incident, where they explicitly mentioned the Chinese were able to deny the Philippine Navy the accomplishment of its mission of providing humanitarian assistance.
Yeah.
So this is a very strong statement, no? Basically providing points regarding the fact that naval ships are supposed to enjoy sovereign immunity against boarding and harassment.
Ang tinatanong namin, Prof, bakit medyo tahimik yung ating armed forces tsaka government sa ganitong napakaseryosong incident? Perhaps one of the most serious incident. Nakuha lang namin yung balita kay Ray Powell na nakuha niya sa Pentagon. Sa Pentagon pa, hindi dito niya nakuha yung details. So, why the
Well,
silence?
now, you work in government.
Yeah.
You know, when issues like this, I don't know if you remember, when you remember the March 3, 2011 incident that shocked the late President Benigno Aquino III. Remember this?
Yeah.
the discussion was not happening anymore at Camp Aguinaldo. It's already happening at Malacanang.
Pero even
So that's my
Malacanang,
guess.
even Malacanang is
Usually
silent.
if you study crisis like this, once looking at the gravity of the crisis, the chain of command goes up. The buck stops at the top. So this is my take. This is something I teach in class. This is an example of a foreign policy crisis. And once you have a foreign policy crisis, the one who will be taking over, the point person, the buck stops with him, is no less than, of course, than the commander-in-chief.
Prof, when you said...
Do you agree with me, Ronald?
For somebody who worked in government.
Yes, ang kaibahan lang ay lumabas na to sa ibang mga bansa eh. No? Ibig sabihin, hindi siya na-contain. Usually, kung nagka-crisis management ka, kino-contain mo yung balita. Pero ito, nagsalita ang US Embassy, nagsalita ang Japanese Embassy, nagsalita ang New Zealand, nagsalita ang Australian, no? At kumbaga, the cat is out of the bag. So, wala ka masyadong naitatago.
No, but the crucial point is how will the president
Response.
ask the public to take this? Kasi clearly, this is a case, again, the term used by the Indo-PACOM. No, I'll send you a copy later if you have the chance.
Please.
This is a case on an illegal use of force.
Yeah.
Because Indo-PACOM, the United States has already broadened the definition of an armed attack. It's not anymore kinetic. Let me read what is stated here, no? Has long position that inherent right. An illegal act of force is not limited by law to kinetic armed attack. The use of munition, but could also include non-kinetic attacks that result in death, injury, damage, or destruction of persons and objects. Clearly, this incident caused injury to the personnel of the Philippine Navy, and of course, this involved boarding a Philippine Navy ship, despite supposed to be it's just a rubber dinghy.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it was damaged. It's an extension of any warship of the Philippine Navy. And of course, the fact that, if you have to look at it, this could lead to the invocation of the Mutual Defense Treaty.
So, anong tingin mo, Prof? Hanggang kailan itong silence na ito? Dahil halimbawa, today, mga mahigit 100 ng media yung nag-text sa akin eh. Are we backpedaling? Are we de-escalating? So medyo confused din yung media. No? Kaya,
let's wait for the president to make a decision. Let's at this point in time, I don't want to second guess the president. When and how and what will be his statement? If it's not the president, I'm looking at the national security advisor, Secretary Anyo, to make the decision. But again, analyzing it from the perspective of an academic, when you talk about this kind of incident, it's no less than, of course, the commander-in-chief, where, of course, the buck stops with him.
Prof, you're saying that the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command has by itself broadened the definition of an armed attack?
It's not
beyond the munitions.
It's not you. I think the statement came even earlier. During the U.S. Senate Armed Forces Committee hearing, the former Indo-PACOM commander, Admiral John Aquilino, already provided this definition. It's not anymore limited to a kinetic armed attack. Any hostile action that could cause injuries, death, will already be considered as an unlawful armed attack that could lead to the invocation of Article 4 of the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty. I'm just, basically looking at these statement documents that the U.S. Indo-PACOM released just today.
Thus, Prof, can I go back to what you said kanina? Naval ships enjoy sovereign immunity versus boarding. Could you expound on this? What is it?
Well, it's stated here because there is extension of the state. So they're supposed to be entitled to sovereign immunity, but China couldn't care less.
But it's
at this point in
peacetime.
time. But if I get boarded that ship,
Di ba, Prof, at peacetime, hindi pwede talaga yan? Peacetime
yes.
tayo. Yeah.
Peacetime supposed to be enjoying a peaceful relation with China.
Yeah.
Why did the Chinese have done it against a sovereign Philippine Navy boat? Miski boat yan, extension pa rin yan, of course.
Okay,
And the harm was inflicted on uniformed personnel of the Philippine Navy.
Professor, do the Chinese also go by the same principles?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that from their perspective, we don't stand a chance. So let's do it against the Filipinos. Let's give them a dose of their own medicine. And also probably sending a message to the United States that you're not a really credible treaty ally, and more significantly also sending a message to the G7.
Okay, you mentioned...
Remember the statement of the G7? The G7 statement last weekend was very specific about this. And now China is basically telling them, see, your statements simply do not matter to us. Just like how the Chinese treat the arbitrate ruling, your statement is just a piece of trash paper.
Okay.
Even the Mutual Defense Treaty, in a way, by their very action, they're basically telling us that your 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty is no good than a piece of trash paper.
By China's calculation, Professor, do you think that they see the U.S. as a, well, like you mentioned a while ago, that they're not a credible treaty ally, that the U.S. might not rush to the defense of the Philippines in case an incident like this happens?
Yes, because from their analysis, the United States is focused in a number of issues. Ukraine, of course, in Gaza, Israel, then also in case of Taiwan, no? I don't know whether it's a coincidence. I don't know if you read the news account that the Chinese Navy ordered one of its ballistic missile submarine to surface in the Taiwan Straits. Sending again a signal to Taiwan, sending a signal to Japan, sending a signal to the United States. We have this ballistic missile submarines.
Is China
that could
probing? Are all these actions, do they mean that China is probing the readiness and willingness of the United States to get involved militarily in this region?
No, not being involved. It's to challenge the United States. Going back a couple of months ago, remember when Xi Jinping met the key top leaders of the People's Liberation Army's Navy in the Military Commission and told them, prepare for a confrontation in the maritime domain. So we see all of this happening right now.
Okay, one last question before I let you throw your question to Professor De Castro.
Sure.
Last night, one of our shows, The Big Story, had a China-based or Beijing-based Chinese geopolitical commentator, Mr. Andy Bok. And he was saying that the Philippines is leaning on a crumbling wall.
Yeah, that's it.
Depending on the
That's it.
United States to rush to its defense. And Mr. Mock was raised doubts on the readiness and capability of the United States Navy to actually mount a credible defense.
Yes.
He was mentioning two things at least, that the United States Navy is involved in a major bribery scandal. And the second is that the United States 7th Fleet has been seeing some accidents from a few years back. So it's not in tip-top shape.
Yes, that's basically, of
Do
course,
you
the
share
purpose
that
here.
view? That the U.S.
I don't share that view. I don't share that view. If let's just wait how the United States would react. Sabi nga ni Ronald, no? One of the reasons why the Allies were able to pick up this incident was the fact that the United States Marines are already operating a reconnaissance facility in Batangas. They already sent their drones. So probably they already had picture of this. And currently you have, I think, a Marine Aviator unit with F-35s at Clark Airfield. And of course, you have the U.S. Marines conducting live fire drills with the Philippine Marines in Ilocos. Let's see how the United States would have to react to this.
Professor De Castro, medyo malayo po yung yung Ilocos Norte dito sa mga pangyayari sa May Ayungin. So,
pero pag dinala yan, in-airlift yan bigla. Right? Ilang tawag dito, ilang what do you call this? Chinook helicopters might be here right now. And of course, the F-35s at Clark Air Base. They're supposed to be operating along the coast of Palawan. So again, I think both sides are now consulting what kind of actions do we have to show. And of course, China also have to take into account that's election year in the United States. The president could not be seen as weak during election period.
At saka, Prof, itong live fire exercises sa Ilocos, ito yung first time na inamin ng ating armed forces, yung spokesman doon sa Ilocos na live fire exercises, that they are doing this in preparation for a possible war in Taiwan. Usually, tahimik tayo sa issue ng Taiwan eh. No? Kaya nagulat ako nung yung nagsalita na spokesperson ng armed forces doon sa live fire exercises na yan. Inamin niya that this is in preparation for a possible war in Taiwan. Usually, ang ating pinag-uusapan ay West Philippine Sea or yung freedom of navigation sa South China Sea. Ito yung one of the rare times na narinig ko tayo talking about a possible war in Taiwan in relation sa ating live fire military exercises in Ilocos.
Ronald, he simply took the cue from the president. Because last week, when the president visited the headquarters of the 5th Infantry Division, he mentioned this. The armed forces of the Philippines should prepare for external threats. We have catch a special attention. I am paraphrasing the word, no? We have catch the special attention of China because of our proximity to Taiwan. So he actually is just taking the cue from the commander-in-chief. But at least the message is going down from the president going down to the armed forces of the Philippines, that they have to prepare for external defense, and by external defense, we should not limit ourselves in looking at the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea. In fact, I think, Ronald, you agree with me, the more dangerous flashpoint is actually Taiwan.
Yes. But ang problema, Professor, yung usapin ng Taiwan is not necessarily a defensive position. It could also be offensive. Depende sa ating treaty partner, yung US. Diba? Halimbawa, magkaroon ng invasion ang China at depensahan ng US ang Taiwan. Diba, invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty, we can be dragged in a war over Taiwan. It's not necessarily defensive.
Well, Ronald, you work in government. You know, for an alliance, it's a two-way street.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly, right?
Yeah.
I remember when Secretary Ochoa, I still remember this, June 2011, right? When Secretary Ochoa raised the fact that we might invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty, you have then immediately Ambassador Harry Thomas saying yes, right? We are in constant consultation. But of course, the very essence of an alliance, it's a two-way street. We expect our ally to assist us, and at the same time, our ally expects us to assist them in times of need. Right? So that's the point. That's something that we in a Filipino nation should understand. Alliance is a two-way street.
Yes, ang kaibahan lang, Prof, sa ating kasing constitution, we renounce war as an instrument of foreign policy. Wala yun sa constitution ng US.
Oh, wala. Pero kasi naman, actually, since 1945, no country has declared war.
Yeah.
They just go to war, right? The United States is involved in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, war in Afghanistan, without declaring war. Congress has never declared war since 1941. Russia didn't declare war when, of course, it invaded Ukraine. China did not declare war in 1962 when it used force against India, right?
Pero sir, kasi,
so blame it on the UN, kasi lahat ng UN members would have to have this provision. So what do? You just don't declare war, you go to war.
Yes, sir. Pero sir, in the case of the US, for declaration of war, it has to be the US Congress that declares war.
Yeah, but the US president has what we call the special
yes, sir.
War Powers Act.
That's what they use for example, Vietnam and Korea and so on
he
down the
could
line.
deploy American forces without asking Congress to declare war.
But what I also mean is this, for example, if somebody invokes the Mutual Defense Treaty, just in case somebody does invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty, the U.S. President may or may not act on it. He could toss it to Congress.
Okay. If they have to read the Mutual Defense Treaty, Article 4, it does not provide for any automatic response.
Yes, sir.
It simply provides for mutual consultation. So that's the thing. Both allies will have to consult of what action to take. Article 4, no mention of the, unlike of course in the case of NATO, sa Washington Treaty of 1949. Very specific doon. But not the 1951 Philippine-U.S. Mutual Defense Treaty, not in the case of the 1953 US ROK Mutual Defense Treaty, not even in the case of the 1961 US-Japan Security Treaty, or even in the case of Australia.
Yes, sir.
It just provides for consultation.
Yes, sir. Sir, if I may, I'll just read that portion of Article 4 so that everybody knows what you're talking about. Each party recognizes that an armed attack in the Pacific area or either the parties would be dangerous to its own peace and safety, and declares it would act to meet the common dangers in accordance with its constitutional process. So hindi nga siya automatic na then go to war. It's just that it gets the ball rolling for people to start talking.
Yes. No, but it also, of course, part of the American constitutional process is the fact of the War Powers Act. The U.S. President could order the deployment of American forces without congressional consent, congressional approval. He simply needs to inform Congress, I think 30 days after, of course, you have U.S. forces being deployed at a given situation.
Right.
Pero sir, what are the chances? Given, let me go back a bit. A couple of weeks ago, we had the Chinese confiscating the resupply airdrops for BRP Sierra Madre. And then this time naman, ito kiskisa na talaga. Then there was actual boarding, confiscation of the Navy's weapons, and damaging the vessel, puncturing the rigid-hulled inflatable boats.
And losing a finger.
And naputol pa yung kamay yung daliri ng isang daliri.
Oh, that constitute. If we would read yung nilabas ng US Indo-PACOM today, that will constitute unlawful armed attack. Sa unlawful armed attack. That would of course lead to the possibility, this is considered a non-kinetic attack that result in death, injury, damage, or destruction of persons or objects. That's already considered the term an illegal use of force. Illegal use of force. That is not anymore limited to a kinetic armed attack. The use of munitions. That is how you define kinetic armed attack.
Yung pala yung kinetic.
O gumamit ka na ng live munitions. Yun na. Ayun ang definition na. Very technical. But of course, the Mutual Defense Treaty and interpretation is not anymore limited to kinetic armed attack.
Yes, sir. Sir, so what's the process now? I mean, we had this incident. What's up next, or who takes the next step, if at all?
The president, possibly. The president will instruct. Si Ronald ang ano
Kaya tahimik lang. That explains why tahimik lang.
Whether i-invoke ba o hindi.
Okay.
Depends.
Professor De Castro, a while ago you said that you don't agree with this Chinese commentator I was quoting you a while ago now, who said that the U.S. is no longer, in his words, a credible Pacific power. Meaning to say, they're not afraid of the U.S. They don't think the U.S. will want to tangle with China in this part of the world.
The problem with China, it hasn't experienced what you call a Cuban Missile Crisis situation that happened in October 1962. They have not. They are so, I'll just share with you an experience I had last January attending a conference on maritime security in Singapore. And you have this, he's a retired senior colonel of the People's Liberation Army, Colonel Bo, who told us during the conference, China now has the largest navy in the world. In front of the Americans, in front of the Singaporeans, in front of the other participants in that conference. Professor Jay Batumbakal was with me, and we look at each other. I said, we see really the sense of confidence of China, given the fact that for them, they now have the largest navy in the world and also the largest Coast Guard fleet in the world. The Chinese Coast Guard has about 700 ships. Many of them are, of course, decommissioned vessels of the People's Liberation Army Navy that they simply painted white, and they're still, of course, armed to the teeth. In contrast to the, the Coast Guard vessels that the Philippine Coast Guard has. They're armed to the teeth. So I think this is already giving them a sense of confidence that they could engage the United States Navy in a major confrontation, whether it's armed or a Cuban Missile Crisis style situation of a Mexican standoff.
I'm not sure, Professor. Dahil, yes, they're the biggest navy in the world. They're the biggest submarine fleet in the world in quantity. But in
Yes,
quality...
Sinasabi ko naman sa'yo, I
In
never
quality,
say
they're
quality,
still far
right?
away. Di ba?
I never say quality, I never say tradition, I never say in terms of allies.
Numbers,
Yes.
pure
I'm
numbers.
just telling the
Yes.
Chinese position.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Some of the hardcore generals in the PLA knows their limits. Iba pa yung saber rattling. Iba pa yung propaganda. Pero in real terms, they know that they're a generation behind the Americans. In terms of the
Pero their
quality.
leadership
Yeah. In terms of the
Their
quality.
leadership
Yes.
The
Halimbawa,
leadership ni Xi Jinping
Meron silang 3 aircraft carriers. Dalawa ron, refurbished Ukrainian, old Ukrainian.
No, I heard, casino dati, floating casino daw dati. Totoo ba yun, Professor?
Hindi naman.
Of course.
Ukrainian
Of
aircraft
course.
carrier.
Tapos tama I agree with you, Ronald.
Yeah.
Sinasabi ko lang yung Chinese position.
Yes.
But I
sinasabi
don't
ko,
necessarily
Pagdating
mean,
pogo.
Ang sinasabi ko lang,
of course,
Prof,
nandyan importante yung quality.
Yeah.
Nandyan din the fact, of course, sinagot ko si Colonel Bo noon, no?
Yeah.
Of course, sabi ko, if the United States Navy will confront the Chinese Navy, the United States Navy will not be alone. The 7th Fleet will not be alone.
Yeah.
Of course, you will have the the third largest fleet in the world, and that's, of course, the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. Tapos nandiyan pa yung Australians, and I would suspect the Taiwanese Navy would join the fray. And, of course, you will have treaty allies like the Philippines, Japan, that will provide access to our treaty ally. Medyo tumahimik siya doon. Medyo napansin niya na, he overstepped his position.
So you feel, Professor, that the United States and its allies still have the upper hand militarily here in this region?
Yes, but of course, the crucial test yan, and I hope this will not happen. The ultimate ratio of capability is, of course, the 3-letter word, which I will not mention in this conversation. The ultimate ratio, the ultimate election in international relations.
Yeah.
I wonder
The
what those
three-letter
3-letter words are.
W.
Ending with R.
Yes.
W. That word.
That's the ultimate election.
2 W's. 2 W's.
Right?
Yeah.
It came from a neo-Marxist
Okay.
IR professor
One
who I
W.
really admire.
One W.
E.H.
And one
Carr.
N. And one
E.H.
N.
Carr.
Huh?
Ang point ko lang, Professor, the Chinese, deep within themselves, know that they cannot win yet a war with the Americans and their allies. Kaya they are also circumspect. Aside from the saber rattling na ginagawa nila, aside dun sa propaganda na ginagawa nila, alam nila yung kanilang limits. No? Kaya unless an accident happens.
Ronald, going back to history.
Yeah.
Key leaders of the Japanese Imperial Navy also have the same doubt. No less than Admiral Isuko Yamamoto was very much aware of this. But of course, this did not prevent the Imperial Japanese Navy from launching that attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941.
Yes, because they thought they can cripple the American fleet in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Ngayon,
Dito may mga Chinese writings ngayon na ang purpose nila is not anymore Hawaii, triple Guam. And of course, kaya nga nag-develop na sila ng anti-access area denial capabilities nila eh.
Yeah.
Ang yabang-yabang ng mga Chinese, no? Tatandaan mo, nung pinalabas nila yung DF-21, DF-26, tapos nung nag-deploy dito yung mga Americans nung Typhoon, galit na galit sila. Right? When they show their intermediate range ballistic missiles, they're so proud. But when the Americans deployed the intermediate ballistic missile here, yung Typhoon, they're complaining to ASEAN and accusing us of allowing the Americans to have that missile system deployed here in the Philippines.
Professor De Castro, I wonder if the experience in Ukraine, of course, that's largely a land war, but I wonder whether the experience there is changing the way war might be conducted here in the Pacific.
Yes, now you have a thinking, of course, of the fact that you might have the silver bullet. This is usually very dangerous. Now, countries tend to develop, of course, notion that we have the silver bullet that could basically end the war. And in case in what's happening in Ukraine, you have, of course, the fascination when it comes to AI linked weapon systems, like, for example, drones, guided missiles, guided munitions. So this is creating, of course, the temptation to basically rely on what I call the ultimate election in international relations. So that's the case of what's happening in Ukraine. But of course, at the end of the day, when you talk about if this will happen, everything will depend really on the will, the human will to prevail. But that's the nature, of course, of this animal that we will have to deal with in the 21st century.
In most cases, Professor, I know you're a student of history. It's never a rational move towards a precipice, right? That's why they
beg your
invented.
pardon?
It's never a rational move towards the precipice, toward the brink of war. In most cases, that's why na-invent yung word na in term na sleepwalking to war.
Oh no, I don't believe in that. I still believe in the Clausewitzian notion. Both sides know for a fact that it's a conscious action, and of course, going back to Clausewitz, in extension of policy by other means. Both sides basically feel, China thinks that it has the capacity to push the United States out of the region. So from the Chinese perspective, probably some of them, hindi naman lahat, I agree with my friend Ronald, thinks that this is the ultimate solution. Then of course the other side would have to react.
Well,
So I
both
don't believe
sides-
there is such a, yeah.
Yeah, both sides, I understand, would try to take the next step, hoping that
Yeah.
the other side will back down. I think that's the principle behind deterrence, right? They say you show
Or realpolitik, or what you call realpolitik approach.
So China might be doing this thinking it will deter the U.S., but U.S. can just escalate too and thinking that it will deter China. But it's quite possible that neither side really wants conflict.
We hope so. Again,
But
that's
that-
why I refer back to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. That at the end of the day, cooler heads would prevail and both sides would, of course, go back to the original position and understand what will be the implication if they simply push each other to the limits.
Or it could also be possible that we would just go all the way. Things get
That's
out of
always
hand.
a possibility. That's
Like in
always
Ukraine.
a possibility.
I guess one fine example
Again, I'll
would be
quote
Ukraine.
Marx. Nandiyan si Ronald kaya I cannot help but quote Marx right? 18 Brumaire of Napoleon Bonaparte, right? The first one is a tragedy, the second one is a farce.
Yes.
So which will be the tragedy and which will be the farce?
Ang isang element dito na hindi pa natin pinag-uusapan is yung nature kasi ng system sa China. Dahil merong commitment si Xi Jinping sa kanyang People's Liberation Army at saka sa kanyang Communist Party to take over Taiwan. Kung hindi niya magawa yan...
Within his lifetime.
Yeah. Kung hindi niya
Right.
magawa yan in the next 2 to 3 years, he could be ousted. So he's also fighting for his own survival. And the
Political survival,
survival
yes.
of his family. Dahil sa
Oo.
China kasi, pag nagkaroon ng purging, wipe out yung buong pamilya. Di ba?
Oh,
Hindi lang
tsaka
yung
ano
leader.
pa rin to ito
Yeah.
yung ideological feud ni Xi Jinping kay Mao. Kasi ito yung talagang when Mao was at his deathbed, tinanong siya, ano yung failure mo? Ang sabi ni Mao, Mao was very honest. My failure to end the Chinese Civil War by unifying Taiwan. So alam naman natin yung history ni Xi Jinping, pamilya ni Xi Jinping laban kay Mao, no? Despite the fact that the father was a very loyal Communist Party member who joined Mao
Yeah.
during the Long March, no? But they were purged in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Oo, purged sila, no? So, meron pang, kumbaga, although Xi Jinping is an avid, devoted Communist Party member, he has a personal score to settle with Mao. To basically, in a way, surpass Mao as, one of the, the icons of the Communist Party. Right? So, may personal element din dun eh. Ayun yung take ko, Ronald. Talagang, ito yung, kumbaga, personal drive niya as the Secretary General of the Communist Party, as of course the head of the Military Commission, and of course as the President of the People's Republic of China.
Tsaka for the first time since Mao, meron siyang nawala yung he can be president for life.
Yes.
Before
Of course,
before
with that
him
promise.
kasi, may term yung mga presidente ng China. Except ngayon. Kaya yung power na yan has to be sustained. To sustain that, he has to win Taiwan. Kung hindi niya may panalo yung Taiwan, he could be ousted.
Hindi. Tapos doon rin naman tayo pumasok. Kaya sabi nga ni Presidente, we have caught the special attention of China. because our proximity to China, and of course the decision of the president last year to increase the number of EDCA sites. No, the three of them are of course located in northern Luzon.
Yeah.
Prof, let me just last lang. Let me just push the question further. In the event,
Sure.
in the event that that the president invokes the mutual defense treaty, just in the event, how do you think the U.S. will react? I know they've given all these statements, ironclad, and then the latest one from the Indo-Pacific Command. But of course, a statement of support is not the same as let's do it. So, but kasi in the past parang they were parang anong ginagawa ng Pilipinas? Nako, nanggugulo ata kayo. That was parang 2012 eh.
No, iba ngayon. Iba yung view ngayon. Iba talaga. First, of course, you'll have an extensive consultation. Probably they'll convene the Mutual Defense Board. You'll have, of course, key officials from the U.S. Indo-PACOM coming here, the new advisor, and they'll be discussing the measure. What I see, again, going back to history, noong 1957, during what we call the Quemoy-Matsu incident, where the Chinese Communist forces were preventing the resupply of the Gumindang garrison doon sa Kimen, Matsu, no?
The island.
So binubombard in order ni President Dwight Eisenhower for the 7th Fleet to escort and even bring supplies to the Gumindang garrison that was, of course, being subjected to intense bombardment by the People's Liberation Army. No, talagang ayun nga yung start nung away ni Mao Zedong tsaka ni Nikita Khrushchev. No, sabi ni Mao, nagalit na galit si Mao Zedong nung nangyari yon. Mao Zedong was asking for the Soviet Union to back China with its nuclear arsenal. Sabi ni Khrushchev, you would trigger a nuclear war with the United States. So Khrushchev basically backed off, and this of course started the intense Sino-Soviet split in the 1950s, going way into the 1980s. So ayun yung nakikita ko, going back to history. So posible makita. I'm not discounting the fact that they might talk about our resupply mission being, of course, escorted either by the U.S. Coast Guard or the United States 7th Fleet.
So you're
And
looking
of
at
course,
gradations of response, not necessarily
Yes.
not necessarily wham bang and ito na.
No. Ito yung pinaka-ano.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mahalaga yung sinabi ni Prof. Dahil ang hindi alam ng marami, the closest we came to a third world war, a nuclear war, is not exactly the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was the crisis between Russia and China. Talagang...
Yes, the Soviet. Soviet pa noon. Noong panahon natin, wala pa Russia, Soviet pa.
Nag-threaten ng Soviet Union na inyunyuk ang China.
Over what?
Inukunan ko yung mga estudyante ko when they talk about Russia.
It
Soviet
was a
Union.
border war. Yeah.
So what the U.S. has done is apparently...
The U.S. helped China then.
yeah.
To
Back
de-
then,
yeah.
back then, the strategy was
To de-escalate.
Well, the strategy back then was to make sure that they don't coalesce, they don't get together, right?
Split
Russia-
them. Yeah,
to split them apart.
Ayun
That's
yung
why you have the
handiwork ni the late Henry
Kissinger.
Kissinger.
right. Okay.
To
Strategic
split.
ambiguity.
But now, Prof, this U.S. administration has managed to bring them together.
Oh yes, of course. Ayun yung ano. Pero of course, behind the US, you have treaty allies like Japan and NATO behind them, solidly behind them. Ang only problem, of course, is what will happen in the November election in the United States.
It's not exactly expected to change much, right, Professor? Because I
was
remember the
listening
last time you were here.
Yung speech ni Donald Trump regarding Ukraine. The bottom line, of course, is the U.S. support to Ukraine.
Well, maybe in Ukraine it might change, but as far as China is concerned, Professor,
I think China, of course. Ayan ang ano.
I understand that you mentioned last year, no? Ikaw nagsabi, if there's something that will unite the Americans, it's China. In fact,
But
it's a
of course, it
bipartisan.
will create distance between the US and NATO. Ay naman yung isang implication nito. Interestingly, we're seeing the active participation of NATO right now here, even in the Indo-Pacific. Well, we don't know. Honestly, we don't know what will happen. This is a very fluid situation. No?
Okay, you're talking about NATO, Professor. How powerful is NATO? I understand that, it doesn't really have much in terms of...
It's building up. It's building
Okay.
up. Don't discount the Germans. Don't discount the Germans. Once the Germans started building up, then you'll
Germans
see
and the
NATO.
British.
The British, hopefully. But I really look at the Germans.
Okay, when you say the Germans, you're looking at German manufacturing prowess. The
Yes,
ability
that's it.
to
Industrial.
produce,
Yeah.
the industrial might of Germans.
Yeah, because what would matter, just in case if push comes to shove, is really the
Manufacturing.
industrial might.
Yeah, the industrial might.
Industrial might would really matter in this game.
Does the U.S. still possess that might?
It is. It's there. Just
it's
wait.
there.
I hope it will not be triggered. I hope
Okay.
it will not be triggered, honestly. Because only one thing would trigger that. And the same thing that, of course, triggered the U.S. economy to immediately recover from the depression in the 1930s. And that was, of course,
Hasn't
the
the
Japanese.
U.S. Basically abandoned its manufacturing and turned it over to China now?
No, I don't think so. The industrial know-how is still there. What is important is the industrial, what they call the industrial ethic, the work ethic
Okay.
is still there in the United States.
But the physical infrastructure, Professor,
It's easy to build. I think it's easy for the Americans to rebuild it again.
you're counting on that, the ability of the Americans to build those factories that will churn out all those war material.
Patrick, like you and me, we're students of history, right? Looking at what happened after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, right? The massive, how the Americans were able to transform their largely civilian-oriented industry. Ford, Buick, Pontiac, they were just manufacturing cars.
Exactly,
But in a
Professor.
matter of months,
but aren't
right?
all those manufacturing capability now in China and no longer in the U.S.?
Some of them have already transferred to the States. Many of them have already transferred to the States since the Obama administration. That's why the United States could afford to use the term decoupling. Because you have American industries already moving out of China.
Actually, Professor, what they are doing is less decoupling. It's more diversification towards new countries like India, Vietnam, Indonesia. No, mas ganoon yung ginagawa nila. Not
Pero
yet.
hindi yung yung industries that are related with defense.
Yeah.
What we are basically seeing are industries that, of course,
Yes.
manufacture consumer products.
Yeah.
But we don't take note of the industries that are linked with what we call the military-industrial complex.
It's still in the United States. That's
Yung
what
It's
it
still
is.
in the United States
Yung
very
defense.
much.
Kasi kung padami nila ng drones, and drones are important now, right? In this
Yeah.
modern
Yes,
warfare, it's China makes a lot of drones,
Yes.
right?
Pero Patrick, yung sinasabi mo kanina are
Effective.
basically commercial.
But those commercial
Yeah,
drones,
yeah.
we're seeing them in action in Ukraine. Isn't that right, Professor?
Yes. Yeah, but of course, it will take some technical know-how to transform those civilian drones into, weaponized drones.
Yeah, but that would just be a hop and skip away, right, Professor? From civilian drones to
Yun
to
yung-
drones that can be turned into
Yun
weapons.
yung new arms race eh.
Yeah.
The new arms race.
Yan, kasi ang dami, puro DJI ang ang mga drone na ginagamit ngayon. It's Chinese-made
US
drones.
drone ba? Maliban sa military drones.
Commercial, you're talking about the commercial drones.
The
We all know
US is the first
DJI,
one that
right?
weaponized drones. The US, during the time of Barack Obama, in the campaign against Al-Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan, they were the one who started using weaponized drones.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right?
The military-grade drones. Yung,
Yes.
Military grade,
But you need, di ba? You need to just keep producing all those drones. I mean, I think in Ukraine, that's what we're seeing in action.
Yung mga
These
mumurahing
commercial
drone lang,
drones
oo.
carrying bombs and dropping
Talagyan
them
lang-
on
talagyan lang ng
tanks and
mortar.
soldiers.
But they are,
That's
Ganyan,
Yes.
prof, di ba?
but they are made in Turkey. These are Turkish drones.
Turkish drones. But I'm saying that even China can probably outproduce Turkey when it comes to producing drones that can be weaponized.
And probably it's
ganun.
also a high time for us, for the armed forces of the Philippines and our industrial sector, to focus on the manufacture of drones that could be used for civilian and military purposes.
Kasi Prof, ito let's geek out a bit, no? You mentioned Ronald, you mentioned quality over quantity. China's the largest navy because of the number of boats, but quality is still with the United States. But in war, I think in the past, World War II at least, Professor, di ba? Hindi quality ang nagpanalo sa giyera, kundi quantity.
Quantity. Quantity
it was
pa
the
rin.
Shermans,
Quantity pa rin,
the lesser capable Shermans won over the
Overwhelmed,
heavier and
the
more
Tigers.
powerful Tigers. Right.
Yeah, of course, quantity talaga. And
Quantity.
of course, when it comes to immobilization of industrial production, the United States has an experience. Second World War, Cold War.
That's what you're counting
Cold
on.
War was
that
also
the
a
United
matter
States
of-
possesses the ability to scale up quickly. You're hoping
Quickly,
that it's still
and more
there.
importantly, the United States industrial prowess is primarily independent. It caters primarily to the American market, unlike the Chinese industry, it caters to the international market. So that's why yung position nga ng Communist Party during the 20th Party Congress, it's time for China to shift its industrial policy from an export-oriented one to more of import substitution. Already indicating that it's really high time to gear our economy in producing something that could be useful for domestic actors, like for example, the People's Liberation Army or probably ordinary Chinese consumers.
Just to emphasize yung ibig sabihin ng quality. Halimbawa, China has more battleships than the US. But the US has
Wala nang battleship ang US mo.
Yeah, the
Walang
US
battleship,
has 16
destroyers.
carriers.
Ang pinakamalaki ngayon,
The US has 16
Ticonderoga class
carriers.
cruisers.
China has only 4. No?
4, yeah,
Ibig sabihin, 4 lang ang carriers ng China. Dalawa pa made in Ukraine. No? So,
Ay, hindi, isa
ibig
lang.
sabihin, kahit mas marami...
May sinasabi sila about carriers eh.
Yeah.
You can sink carriers.
Well, depende sa... Paano
Diba?
meron pa
Those
yan eh.
artificial islands cannot be sunk
Well,
probably, no?
ang carriers kasi may Iron Dome yan eh, katulad ng Israel eh. No? May Iron
Oo,
Dome
okay,
yan
so-
na lahat ng titira dyan ay parang may cover yan ng mga missile system. Yun yung
But
kaibahan.
it's
Yeah,
cheaper to
may-
send
kaya may,
a whole
may-
slew of missiles
yes.
against one target
Yeah.
than it is to build another carrier.
Hindi,
and
pero
go
ang mahalaga
head-to-head.
sa carrier are not the boat eh. Mahalaga sa aircraft carrier are the
Airplanes.
fighter jets. No? Yun yung fighter
Pero
jets na
ito yung,
makakalaban.
okay. Ang advantage talaga ng United States yung submarines.
Okay.
Lalo na yung mga attack submarines nila.
Mas marami yun kaysa
China
sa
has simply no experience in anti-submarine warfare nor in submarine warfare. The United States Navy has that experience, both in terms of submarine warfare
Yeah.
and also anti-submarine warfare during the Second World War and even to the Cold War.
Kahit mas maraming submarines sa China kaysa sa US, yung attack submarines, yung pinakamahalaga, mas marami pa rin na US.
US. Tsaka yung US attack submarines, nuclear-powered.
Yes.
Okay.
Like yung mga Chinese, mostly diesel-powered. Tapos pasasali pa ang...
Nauubusan ng
of course,
gasolina.
Tsaka
papasok pa ang
advanced
Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force.
tsaka advanced propulsion system.
Okay.
Yun yung hindi mo maririnig.
Alam mo yung lower screen graphics natin, military capability US versus China. We could go on and on about.
Tapos magpo-provide pa tayo ng bases or ports, access for those attack submarines. Right?
okay. Yeah.
Those facilities in Subic na ginagamit dati ng US 7th Fleet are still there.
Okay.
Right? Yung mga underground silos na
Professor,
ginagamit ng 7th Fleet.
we'd like to keep you on in this very interesting discussion, but that's all the time we have for now. Thanks for joining the Storycon.
Thank you. So next time, probably, you should invite me so I should dress like you guys.
Yes.
Oh, right?
Suit up, di ba?
Alright.
Tsaka mas masayang usapan to over a bottle of whiskey.
Alam mo,
Okay,
sir,
I can
naka-search
bring you
lang kami.
a bottle of, I just came from Taiwan. Yung single malt whiskey nila.
Kabalan. Kabalan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, International Affairs Analyst Renato De Castro. Bok?
Thanks for joining the Storycon today, Ron Lemas, our resident political pundit. And join us again tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the Storycon. I'm Adling Gao.
I'm Patrick Paez. We are One News, all sides, all the time. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.